In this lecture, we're going to be looking at concepts in Chinese healing systems, and as we've been talking about throughout this course, the Chinese healing system has a very different way of viewing the body and then as a result viewing healing, and it's very much a holistic system, as we've been seeing with some of the systems coming out of Hinduism. And as I said before, the Chinese system also partakes of some of the Buddhist concepts and kind of mixes them in. So there's the influence of all those aspects that were already discussed, including Confucianism. So Confucianism gives respect for the body, and so the general understanding is that the body is a gift from your ancestors and from your family, and so you have to treat it with utmost care. So you have to treat your own body with respect, and you have to treat the body of your family members in the same way and protect them and take care of them. So the Confucian ideas come in, but probably the most influential system in Chinese healing is Taoism, and we'll be talking about that a little more as we go along. The most important writing in the Chinese medical tradition is the Huangdi Neijing, and so we can see it's from the 3rd century BCE, so it's an ancient text, and it's associated with the Yellow Emperor that I mentioned, Huangdi, who is semi-legendary, and he's associated with bringing civilization and the aspects of civilization to China. So if you recall from the earlier lecture that his wife brought silk, the making of silk, and so all of these aspects of Chinese culture are associated with this emperor, and so he brings with him this classic of health and healing. And so that shows you that right from the very foundational pillars of Chinese society, health and healing was part of that. And I noticed recently that this scripture has been put on the UNESCO heritage site of what's called world memory. So the idea that it's a text that's so important it belongs to the world, which I think is an excellent way of looking at all these systems that we've been talking about, that they're all part of world memory and contributing to world culture and well-being. And so we see also that respect in Chinese culture for tradition, that you don't just throw away the past, you build on it. So even now, somebody who's studying to be a traditional Chinese medical doctor will study this text, and it includes a description of acupuncture. And so we see that this remains foundational. I don't want to say it's the same, but it's equivalent to the respect in which the Hippocratic corpus was held in the Western tradition. I think this quotation from the Neijing gets at the very heart of the Chinese medical system, and I also think it has important things to say to our culture and our approach to health and healing. So it's written, "The sages did not treat those already ill, but treated those not yet ill. They did not govern what was already in disorder, but what was not yet in disorder." So you can see this idea of, it relates to what we would call preventative medicine, but it goes a lot deeper than that. So the idea that the wise people, the sages who brought forward this knowledge, are more interested in keeping people healthy. So focusing on supporting and keeping people healthy so that they don't develop symptoms and become ill. So the idea that often if we're dealing with symptoms, the disease has progressed already to such a point that it's difficult to handle. And it's interesting to see this is linked with politics and governing the state. They did not govern what was already in disorder, but was not yet in disorder. So again, that idea of harmony and the idea that you have to keep all aspects of life and society in harmony. And so these things are all linked. We tend to, in our society, compartmentalize all of these aspects of life. But from a Chinese point of view, you need a well-run state, you need a well-run family, and then the individual can thrive and be happy within that larger environment. So within the Neijing, we find an emphasis on diagnosing. So as we find in most of the health systems of the world, the idea that you have to look at the person to diagnose them. So to inspect the patient's complexion, to examine the patient's eyes, lets one know whether the qi has dissipated or has returned. The patient's physical appearance should be the focus. And this is definitely part, if you ever go to a TCM practitioner, this is immediately what they're going to do before they do any other procedure like acupuncture on you. And so it's looking at the person, and we saw this in Ayurveda as well. It's very much a hands-on observation of the person and all aspects of them. And to my knowledge, nurses do this. They look in the eyes, they look at the fingernails and so on. So this is still very important. And again, I think it's a corrective because I think in our medical system, you know, even now it's online, so there's no way to really look at the state of the person. And sometimes that can be revealed from the way they're speaking, the way they're breathing, and all of these things. So this is very much something that has to be done in person, where you can pay attention to these sorts of details. Again, in this case, we're looking at an energetic model. This is not a mechanistic model, so it's about different energies of the body associated with different organs of the body. It's obviously a very complex system. I'm just going right along the surface here. You have to train for years in this tradition to be a practitioner. But I do want to look at three main ideas from within that energetic understanding. And so just quoting from Zhao's book, Reflections of the Moon on Water, moving towards well-being depends on the harmonious functioning of our physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects, the three levels of energy known as the three treasures. So she goes on to say, all three treasures are intimately interwoven and must be consciously cultivated and balanced to maintain optimal health. So again, that idea of cultivation, which is a very important part of Chinese thought in Confucianism and in Taoism, that this just doesn't happen. You have to actively cultivate it and work with it. So the first treasure is Jing. It roughly translates as essence. And so the idea of this being what we would call our genetic inheritance. So the idea of what we're inheriting from our parents. And this aspect is unique to each individual. And all of us from this point of view are born with certain strengths and weaknesses coming from this innate inheritance from our families. And of course, we all know this to be true, that all families, lineages have within them certain weaknesses. So Jing is what you come into life with. Qi or Qi is the life force found throughout the cosmos, which in the human body is understood as running through channels called meridians. So you've probably heard of this word of Qi or Qi. So the practices of Qigong, for instance, are meant to keep this energy flowing. So the idea of flow is very important here. And so the TCM has mapped out the entire human body in terms of the flow of the qi. And so a lot of what traditional Chinese medicine is doing is ensuring that the flow is happening, and that flow is attached to the larger energies of the cosmos. So it's the idea of the individual being connected to these larger energies. So so the ideal is for qi to be flowing smoothly without obstructions. So I'll be talking more in detail about acupuncture shortly. Shen is the most subtle of the three treasures, and it equates roughly to what would be called the soul or spirit. And this is what's believed to remain after death, the death of the body. So there's sort of the animating spirit of the physical body and then the Shen. And so Shen is associated also with morality and conscience. And so we can see these aspects are all connected. Living a moral life, an ethical life, being responsible to your family, which is filial piety, you know, being connected with nature. So all these aspects are related, and Shen, as I said, is the most subtle of these three energies that have to be cultivated and taken care of. So each would each require certain practices. So typically for Shen, it would be more religious, spiritual practices that would keep that cultivated. So related to these energies comes the meridian system from within, or the Jing-Lo system within traditional Chinese medicine, which roughly translates to channel network. So to pass through and then connecting tributaries. So I'm showing you here an image of a typical mannequin that would be used in training somebody in working with these meridians. And so they may be, just to be clear, There's also forms of massage within traditional Chinese medicine that work with these points. It doesn't have to be acupuncture with the needles. And so you can see this is a very elaborate system that somebody has to learn. And so they use these mannequins as a teaching tool. So the meridians are broken down into two categories, the Jingmai and the Lomai. The Jingmai represents the meridians, the Lomai are the various connections. So there are these very important connecting points on the body. And the meridian system is also linked to, don't worry, I'm not going to be quizzing you on these details. I just want you to get a sense of the larger system. So the meridian system also follows the 5 elements theory. So the idea of that this is related to the organs of the body, the stomach, the bladder, the gallbladder, the large and small intestines, the heart, liver, spleen, kidney, and lungs. And so often when TCM doctors are talking to the patient, they're talking about the state of these organs and working with strengthening them through certain herbs. So from the point of view of traditional Chinese medicine, the meridians are what connects the key of the body to that larger energy of the cosmos. So as I said, it's like that grid of energy across the human body that links it to the higher order. The other foundational pillar of traditional Chinese medicine is herbs. So knowing about herbs is a fundamental part of learning to be a practitioner. So it's sometimes said there are 50 fundamental herbs, so you can see that's already a lot to understand. And so this goes back thousands of years in China, this understanding of these medicinal herbs, as it does in all cultures in the world. And so it's part of that holistic approach to health and healing. And as has been said, this goes beyond the idea of just dealing with symptoms. It's the idea of looking at underlying processes and balancing the flow of energy in the body along the meridians. So, so herbs are at the center of traditional Chinese medicine, and they can be given in a variety of ways through tea, tinctures, capsules, boiled in water. There's a variety of ways, and so they're unique to that person. And so again, this is very different than just prescribing a drug that's a kind of a panacea for everybody. This is very much about the state of your energy in your body that the doctor is figuring out and then prescribing. And so in many traditional Chinese medicine clinics, they'll have it in capsule form, or they may send you to Chinatown to a herbologist where you'll get the fresh herbs. So if we look at this picture, these are fresh. And in my understanding, it's usually said that the closer they are, this makes sense, this is true of any organic compound, that the fresher it is, the more efficacious it is with working with these energies of the body.